Hello, this is Mr. Smith, also known as Teach Smith on YouTube, and this is Comparing Power and Conflict Poems Lesson 1, the week commencing the 1st of June 2020. This lesson is mainly for my class and other Year 10s at Reigate School. However, of course, other Year 10 students and other students are welcome to watch. Now, I thought it would be useful to begin with a SPAG exercise. This will also help you to remember, recap, revise and inspect a course which Year 10 at Reigate School studied in the autumn term. So you have a couple of options. You can either rewrite this paragraph on line paper, or you can scan through the paragraph, read through the paragraph and spot the individual SPAG mistakes. So an inspector course was first performed just after the end of World War II. It was a time of great change in Britain and many writers were concerned with the welfare of the poor. Priestley wanted to address this issue. This is why social responsibility is a key theme of the play. So please now pause this video and try to find the SPAG errors. So as you can see, you must have a capital letter for all three words and inspector calls, a capital I for the start of a sentence. It was the different kind of great, no apostrophe for writers, correct spelling of welfare, only one L not two. Often people forget the E after the L in Priestley, and responsibility is a tricky word as well. There are no A's in responsibility. So on to the main task, on to the main topic of this video, comparing power and conflict poems. You are building up to your AQA GCSE English Literature Paper 2. This is a closed book, so there are no anthologies in the exam hall, and it is an anthology of 15 poems. However, the key word here is anthology, so this means it's a collection chosen by the exam board. The most important thing is to understand how each poem explores a form of power or conflict or both. So every poem will be about power, a form of power, or a form of conflict, or some kind of type of both. Then it's important to understand how the poems compare and contrast to each other as a collection. They are chosen on purpose. There is a relationship between these poems. Technically speaking, every poem can compare to other poems. However, there are clusters, there are themes, there are groups of poems that compare well with each other. So let's look at an exam question. Compare how poets present ideas about power in Ozymandias and in one other poem from Power and Conflict. There will always be a named poem in your exam. This is exactly how it will look. Ozymandias has come up twice now, so it's unlikely to come up for a while, but it's not impossible. And also, Ozymandias is a useful poem to know thoroughly. It will have been a while, Year 10, since you've studied this poem, so let's remind you of what this poem is about. The main messages of the poem. Shelley, the poet, the writer, is criticising the abuse of power. So remember, Ozymandias is based on a real pharaoh, Ramses II, who is known as a very brilliant but incredibly ruthless and savage, cruel pharaoh. So he's criticising the abuse of power. And then Shelley is satirising arrogant rulers. What do I mean by satirising? Well, I mean finding a way of kind of criticising in a kind of almost comical way or political way, or trying to break them down, trying to destroy their image, much like the statue is destroyed in the poem. So taking this image of arrogant rulers and breaking it apart, pulling it apart, finding its flaws and destroying their image. So just think about Year 10, what other poems have you studied recently, or perhaps very recently, that could compare to this poem? Furthermore, let's look at some context of the poet Percy Shelley, or Percy Bysshe Shelley. Now, he was liberal, progressive and forward-thinking. Again, who is another poet that we've studied that is like this? He's a romantic poet. So his dislike of the artificial, the man-made, this would include cities, this would include industrialization. Embrace the natural world, embrace the mystical world, embrace the supernatural almost. Mr. Brough also makes an interesting point. This is perhaps a critique of King George III, because King George III was someone who caused a lot of conflicts, who perhaps saw himself as a very powerful ruler when in fact he was arrogant and misguided. And also in terms of context of the poem, Remember, at this time there was a delivery of an Egyptian statue to England, which would have helped to inspire this poem. So think about this. Think about Shelley as a romantic, idealist, progressive poet. Think about the fact that he's criticising an arrogant ruler, and think about which poem we've studied. So, which poem could you compare Ozymandias to? Again, please pause the video and mind map ideas. You may only come up with one or two. That's fine. You may only come up with one. That's fine. But try to come up with this by yourself. Try to come up with it independently. So the two I would compare would be London and My Last Duchess. Those are the ones I feel compare most strongly to Ozymandias. In today's video, we're going to compare to My Last Duchess. As with my Year 10 class, it is the last poem we studied, and other Year 10s at Rugate School will have studied this poem or will be in the process of studying this poem. So think about why I've chosen these two poems. Think about power and authority in London. Think about power and authority in My Last Duchess. Again, a reminder of the context for Robert Browning. Also liberal, progressive, forward-thinking, supported the emancipation of women and opposed slavery. Remember that in the 19th century, women were still considered the property of men, and slavery was still legal in the United States. Remember the main messages of the poem? Browning is criticising the abuse of power, in this case the Duke abusing his power by strongly implying that the Duke killed the Duchess and then had the painting so they could control the painting, have power over the painting. Browning is criticising gender inequality. A very, very important point that Miss Williams at Reigate raised was that a lot of the times people get pulled into writing quotations and they don't form arguments, when actually arguments is the AO1, and there's a reason why it's first. Your ideas, your inferences, your arguments should come first. So I've just made simple points of comparison here, simple ideas, paraphrases that can form arguments. So they're both arrogant rulers. They both abuse power. And then, to bring in context, both poets were critical of society at the time. Specifically, I would say the rulers of the time and those in authority at the time. Think about those 3 points. Now, go back to Ozymandias. Find a quotation that shows he is an arrogant ruler. Find a quotation that he abuses his power. And think about how you could bring in the fact that the poet is criticising society at the time. Think about the context that I gave you. If the third point is too difficult, just think about for now the arrogance of Ozymandias and how Ozymandias abuses his power. Find a quotation to show that he's an arrogant ruler, and find a quotation to show that he abuses his power. My name is Ozymandias. Look at my works, you mighty in despair. Ozymandias wanted his name to last forever. That's why he made this enormous statue and other buildings and works as well. You've got that repetition of my, the pronoun my, which is going to become very important in a moment as well. Everything belongs to him. Everything you look at belongs to him. He feels like almost the universe belongs to him and that it will belong to him forever. This of course does not turn out to be true. And then abuse of power, sneer of cold command. So cold command implies or infers that there is a real ruthlessness, an emotionlessness, no emotion, no feeling. And that sneer, again, is a disregard for human life, a disregard for the lives of his subjects. And the more difficult point, again, remember what I said about King George III. He's critical of King George III's arrogance and the fact that King George III started lots of conflicts. And a higher point is perhaps that, and again raised by Mr. Bruff, that the sonnet form gradually changes throughout. I don't want you to worry too much at this point about all the different sonnet forms. We will come to that when we come back to school, but it's the fact that it changes throughout. And you can see that as either an evolution or a decay almost. So it's kind of how time will change everything. Time will Time does not care about your feelings or your perceived power. Time is almost the ultimate power. So time even changes the sonnet form itself. If you can, think about what quotations you could use from My Last Duchess. Think about if you can remember anything. Very, very big clue. The quotation might be right in front of you, one of them right now. So again, My Last Duchess. Remember, titles are so useful, particularly this title. My, again that pronoun my, a direct comparison with Ozymandias, and that is so useful. Last, as if she's part of a list. Duchess, she's never named. My gift, again that pronoun, everything belongs to him. And that status of a name, his name being so important. My name is Ozymandias, my 900 years old name. The power of their name, the power of their status. You've got the cold command, and then I gave commands. And the inference, the implication, all smiles stopped, he killed his Duchess. And again some points raised by Mr. Bruff. It's dramatic monologue. So again it's one-sided, mono, one, power only in the hands of wealthy men. Then the enjambment and the fact that it's only one long stanza shows that this man is irresponsible and impulsive. So it is wrong that the power is in his hands only, and that power is only in the hands of wealthy men in general. So look at how well these two poems compare. You've got the my pronoun, the importance of the name, ruthless commands, and you've got the form satirizing them. The form is corrupted, broken in order to satirize these rulers. I've shown you this comparison paragraph in a different video, but here it is again. And it's so important, like I said, to start with the argument. This is Miss Williams' point, this is Mrs. Walsh's point. At Reigate, it's so important. The poems Ozymandias and My Last Duchess both portray arrogant and heartless rulers who appear to wield absolute power. Both Shelley and Browning were vocal critics of the violent abuses of power in their own lifetimes, and this view is reflected in these two poems. The narrator in Ozymandias describes the statue's smile as a sneer of cold command. Ozymandias enjoys the power he wields over the people of Egypt and doesn't care about the suffering they endure, which is emphasized by the alliteration of cold command. Similarly, so that comparative connective, the Duke in My Last Duchess gave commands, then all smiles stopped. The Duke has used his power to exert the ultimate control over the Duchess by killing her. The finality of the Duke's power is emphasized by the sibilant smiles stopped, using a similar technique used by Shelley in Ozymandias. So again, nipping back and forth between the two poems. So Year 10, I hope this video has been useful. Please keep checking Show My Homework for supplementary videos and written tasks. And each week there should be a video helping you to further compare different poems. Thank you for watching Year 10.